Welcome everyone to the first Central Park Challenge event. My name is Janice McPhillips and I am a YAI self-advocate. As a part of our annual Central Park Challenge fundraiser, we are hosting a series of advocacy events to help raise awareness for the intellectual and developmental disabilities community. I believe it is essential to advocate for people with disabilities like me because we face discrimination every day. Advocacy helps us live more independently, obtain fulfilling jobs, and have meaningful interactions with our communities. Here with us today is a fellow disability advocate, New York State Senator John A. Mannion, Chair of Committee on Disabilities. Welcome, Senator Mannion.
Janice, thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to do this. So my name is John Mannion. I'm a newly elected senator, and I come from the Syracuse area. I was born and raised in Syracuse, New York, and I live just outside of it now with my wife and 3 children. I come from a family, like all of us, who have family members that have disabilities, and my aunt had Down syndrome and she lived in residential facilities. I've been a teacher for almost 30 years prior to becoming a senator. And of course, I taught, many of my students had disabilities. I teach biology, and I would teach sections of living environment in there as well. And I hope that I was a good supporter of people that needed supports. My son, I mentioned I have 3 children. My oldest son is 22 years old and he has a diagnosis of autism. So I've seen tremendous gains that he's made over the course of his lifetime. And that had to do with making sure that the right supports were there for him, so much to the extent that he is going to graduate from college with a degree in business analytics in just about 3 months. So I'm really excited to chair this committee because it's a newly established committee. It used to be a part of the mental hygiene old committee, and it has split so that now we can focus on individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities, that we advocate for them. We make sure that the funding is there for them. And, it's really important to me as somebody who came from a world that advocated for this population. I feel it is my duty and take my job very seriously to make sure that people get the supports that they need. And I'm proud to do this today. I really appreciate you letting me talk here for a little bit, but I wanted to make sure everybody knows that I come from a world of advocacy, and it's important to my family, and I want to make sure that I'm a strong advocate for everybody else's family as well.
Wow, that blew my mind right now. It really did. Thank you so much for that. Whew. Thank you for being here with us today for your work in disability community. I have a few questions I'd like to ask concerning upcoming budget cuts to Medicaid. How can people with disabilities be heard in the budget process, especially when everything is virtual now?
It's a good question. So as many of you may have seen, and I just mentioned, I'm the chair, but I had the opportunity, chair of this Disabilities Committee, I had the opportunity to question the OPWDD commissioner about many of these proposed changes in the executive budget. And, unfortunately, there is a lack of information that happened on that day. We've asked for a follow-up written response to the questions that we have. And one of the things that we're concerned about is that we absolutely need a 507 report each year so we know how the agency is spending those dollars. I question the commissioner also on enhanced FMAP funding and Medicaid dollars. Despite the increase in support from the federal government, there are still cuts that are existing in this budget. For example, the care coordination organization cuts that are again proposed this year. So we need this clarified and of where those federal dollars are going to go. for an advocate, there's many out there, and you are an advocate. You can always submit written testimony to the legislature before a budget hearing. And additionally, it's important to meet either in person or virtually with your local state legislators. Another option is to email your legislators, and that makes sure that they know what your concerns actually are, and it makes it easier for them to advocate. I know that there will be a link in the chat, if it's not already there, ways that people can, or a link that makes it very easy to communicate with your state representatives.
Wow, thank you so much for giving out that information. Do politicians talk a lot with people with disabilities?
Well, I can't speak for all politicians, but I can say that I do. It's an important part of my job. The only way to know what the real issues are is to talk to the people that it directly impacts. And, being a legislator, it's very busy, but there's nothing more important than talking to the people and listening to their concerns. So right now we're doing it via Zoom, but in some ways that's helpful because, we don't have travel time, and we can connect very quickly, and it's working pretty well. But there's no substitute for talking to somebody in person, and I look forward to when we get through this pandemic to be able to meet people in person, tour residential facilities, and look at the good work that's being done in day programs.
That's great. I'm happy for that. Last year, Medicaid was getting cut before the COVID pandemic. What will happen to Medicaid this year?
Well, what's proposed in the budget right now is just not okay. There's several cuts, including deferring a 1% cost of living adjustment, a 1% Medicaid cut, and a 5% cut to non-Medicaid OPWDD funding. And I can tell you that I'm strongly advocating against those cuts, and I know there's many people out there joining with me, and they're making sure that their voices are heard for sure. So we're hoping that more federal funding comes, and I'm working with my colleagues to put language into our budget presentation, our One House budget, to protect against those cuts. So not just using words to say we have to protect against them, we need it in writing. Those dollars are coming, and we want to make sure that that this population is not forgotten.
Wow. Someday I hope to meet you in person.
Right. Let's get through this. I agree, Janice.
All right. The direct support professionals help many people with disabilities and are important in many services. Can the government boost their wages?
So these people do such important work, and I can speak to some of the DSPs and their organizations that they work for in the Syracuse area, and that, they struggle because of the funding cuts. And this is such important work. We have to raise the wages of the direct service professionals. We have to do that because we need to recruit more, because there's staffing concerns, and we need to make sure that they stay. And I've had great conversations with many of them. They have developed relationships with the people that they work with, and there's really no substitute for those relationships. We have to value these providers, and the way to show that we value them is to make sure they earn a decent wage, a living wage. And unfortunately, that's not the case everywhere. So I'm a strong advocate, and I believe that there is going to be legislation either in the budget or outside of the budget to make sure that people who provide this service aren't on the same level as somebody that works in, retail or at food service. They're providing important services, and they need to be valued, and that value comes in making sure that they make a decent salary.
Wow. Okay. Wow. It is hard when we get to return to in-person services outside our homes. When can we do that?
Right. Well, I believe that, these programs are important. They're important for socialization. It enriches people's lives to do it. And it's tough because everybody's routine has been disrupted and, scheduling has been difficult. But hopefully we can get the vaccines to the people that need it. And once we get people vaccinated and hopefully our infection rates are low, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel and we'll get back to these programs. They're so important and it's very frustrating, I think, because people really benefit from them and enjoy them, and because they're not partaking in them or partaking, in person. It's really rough.
It is. It is hard for people with disabilities to get vaccines now. How can you help us get vaccinated?
Right. So what I'm proud to say is that once the vaccines were about to come out and they developed a list of people who were prioritized. Unfortunately, there was one group that was not prioritized at a high enough level, and that is people with disabilities that don't live in residential homes. So we fought hard to make sure that they were prioritized, and there was actually a change so that they were moved up to a higher level, and hopefully people are getting those vaccines. We're going to continue to advocate to make sure that there's multiple sites that are convenient and people can navigate through the system to get a vaccination appointment. And beyond that, what we're trying to do now is work with local agencies to set up pretty small vaccination sites for some of our community members that have a really hard time getting to those sites for whatever reason.
Right.
Sometimes that's the case. So I wish I could promise the moon right now, but I'm really hopeful because we've already started the ball rolling. Since there's more vaccines out there, I think they're going to be available, and we might be able to create with these other agencies some small either pop-up sites or bring them right to the people that need them in their residences.
Just so I can add on a little bit about that, I actually got myself vaccinated with my first shot, and I'm going back for my second.
Right. I hope that was a good experience, Janice. I tell you, from the people I've spoken with across the state, they have said it was very well organized and the people were very professional. Yeah. And it was an easy process. Sometimes it's hard to get an appointment, but once people got those appointments, I think it really
was kind of like quick. Well, it was kind of slow getting the appointment. And I actually went to the Aqueduct Raceway because that's what they gave me. And so I went and I got my first shot. It wasn't so bad. I'm going back for my second shot on the 18th. So I'm hoping it's not going to be as bad as the second.
Yeah.
The first one wasn't bad, but
good. Yeah. I hope you have the same experience, and I'm glad you got vaccinated. It's so important for all of us to get back to normal.
And you're right. It was slow because not too many people were in there, and I just went up and they just took me right away, and then they just made me sit for 15 minutes and that was it. So thank you. Last question. Central Park Challenge is going to be virtual again this year, but we want to keep it fun. What is the most fun virtual activity have you participated in or going to participate in?
Yeah, well, this was fun today. I had a good time. I think you did, Janice. I hope you did. This was great. Your questions were great, and I'm really glad we had the opportunity to speak with each other today. And I'm certainly glad that you've had, your first vaccination and you're going for another one, So this has been great, of all the things I've done, and we're all sitting in front of Zoom computer presentations quite a bit, but this was super, and you were a great host, Janice.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank Sen McMahon for joining us today for this conversation and for his advocacy. Please join us for another advocacy event next month. Don't forget, on April 1st, and of course, join us for a live stream celebration on June 5th on centralparkchallenge.org. And hopefully I'll see you in person on that date.
I hope so too, Janice. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you.
It's great.